GutPunched, Alzheimer's, and Caregivers. Navigating the insidious illness of Alzheimer's is something nobody asks for. The disease sneaks up on you and your loved one, and it feels like you've been sucker punched in the gut. Then you ask, where do we turn for help? Who do we call? What do we do? These questions and more are what we hope to answer and give you some direction and hope. Now let's join our host, Jeff Edwards.
Greetings and welcome. This is GutPunched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers, episode 35. Or, are you tired of turkey yet? Well, we hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. We took the week off to recharge a bit because as we enter December, we're going to need all the energy we can muster. It's a long and busy month. Now, today we're going to hear why too many meds can harm Alzheimer's patients. And it's a short article. And then we're going to talk with an 83-year-old woman who has so much energy and so much passion in her fight with Alzheimer's. She's totally engaged in doing as much as she can in sharing her experience and belief in the importance of Alzheimer's research. And I think you will really enjoy our talk. Okay, what are the 3 rules we follow here at GutPunched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers? Number 1, you have to take care of yourself because if something happens to you, who is going to take care of your loved one? Number 2, you can't do it alone. You need help. Find good caregiver groups or network with friends and relatives. Number 3, make a list of people, friends, relatives, coworkers who have offered to help you in time of need. And then make a list of things you need done, but you can't do yourself because caregiving duties are overwhelming. Use the lists, start at the top, and keep going till you get what you need done. You'll find it very helpful. Okay, here we go. This is an article from Newsmax, dated November 4th, 2024. Too many meds can harm Alzheimer's patients. Alzheimer's disease patients prescribed fistfuls of daily drugs are at a greater risk of harm, a new study warns. Patients with Alzheimer's prescribed 5 or more daily medications suffer from more symptoms, falls, and hospitalizations, and they are at greater risk of death, researchers found. They also experienced more functional decline, required more assistance with activities of daily living like eating, bathing, and dressing, and were more likely to need an assistive device like a cane or a walker, said lead researcher Martha Coates, a postdoctoral research fellow with Drexel University's College of Nursing in Philadelphia. Taking 5 or more drugs daily, called polypharmacy, is a significant concern for folks as they age, researchers noted. The cutoff of point of 5 or more medications daily has been associated with adverse health outcomes in previous research, and as the number of medications increase, the risk of adverse drug events and harm increases, Coates said in a Drexel News release. Estimates show that more than 30% of seniors are affected by polypharmacy, researchers said in background notes. However, there is little research on how polypharmacy affects people with Alzheimer's or related dementias, researchers said. For this study, researchers drew data from the National Health and Aging Trends Study, a research project from Johns Hopkins University focusing on Medicare beneficiaries. They analyzed a sample of more than 2,000 people from 2016 to 2019 to track changes in symptoms, diseases, and physical function. We found that older adults with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias and polypharmacy experience more unpleasant symptoms, increased odds of falling, being hospitalized, and mortally compared to those without Alzheimer's disease and related dementias and polypharmacy, Coates said. The new study was published recently in the journal Biological Research for Nursing. There are tools available to help healthcare providers manage heavy medication regimes for older adults, but these tools aren't specifically designed to fit needs of people with Alzheimer's or dementia, Coates noted. More research is needed to develop strategies to prevent or manage polypharmacy in seniors afflicted with Alzheimer's, Coates said. The older adult population is growing in the U.S., with an estimated 80 million individuals over the age of 65 by 2040, said Coates. This means that the number of older adults diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias will also increase, and currently there is no cure. Avoiding adverse outcomes related to polypharmacy can improve quality of life and prevent excess disability for older adults with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias.
We'll be right back to Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
My grandmother had Alzheimer's, and I remember we were all in the hospital room, and for like 10 seconds she recognized who we were, and then it was gone. So it's like a thief. It's taking away memories and who you are as a person. Over 5.5 million Americans have Alzheimer's. That number may double by 2050. For more information, visit rightfocus.org.
This is Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
I have to share that our good friend Amy Schenk of NRPC, almost a regular on Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers, told me about Lee a few months back. Now, Lee is active in many things. She seeks out opportunities in her community, Shell Point Village, and that's the largest continuing care retirement community in the state of Florida. She is also a volunteer at the memory unit at the community, and it's called Connected Living, and she participates in memory stimulation activities for residents. She participates in health fairs where she openly discusses her Alzheimer's diagnosis and the benefits of clinical research. She has been married to her husband, Joe, for 60 years. And she also told me that she tries to learn something new every day. And I tell you all this so you will know something about Lee as she shares her story with us. Hi, Lee. Glad to be speaking with you.
I'm glad to speak with you as well.
You told me how you arrived in Fort Myers a couple of years ago. Can you share that with our listeners? Tell them where you came from and how you ended up down here in Fort Myers, Florida.
Absolutely. Actually, I've been coming to Fort Myers for some time because my parents lived here. But we hadn't been here between 26 and 2019. And in 2019, several things happened in our life, and that is several of our friends got sick suddenly, and some of them were younger than we, and we were 79 at the time. And we started to think, wow, if any of these things happened to us, what would we do? Because we lived in a retirement community that didn't have any health care, and we decided we better look further. I'll just give you one example of what happened to one of our friends, and that is one of our friends who was younger. On Christmas Eve, went with her husband to the hospital because she had a stomach problem, and she thought, oh, well, I'll just be there a couple days. Well, the doctor came back and said, I have bad news for you. You have stage 4 cancer, and our hospital is not equipped to take care of you. You're going to have to find another place to go. So we decided we better start thinking ahead for what might and eventually would happen to us.
Now, when were you diagnosed with Alzheimer's?
I was diagnosed at age 79 because, as I said before, at 79, all these things happened to our friends. And we immediately started looking at what is called CCRCs, or continuing care retirement communities. Unlike the retirement community that we were currently in, there was no health care. And so we were looking at these CCRCs, which had not only independent living, but assisted living, nursing care, memory care, and even hospice. And we thought that was probably something that we would want to do. We had experience with that in that my parents had also been in a CCRC. So we knew how they operated and how well you were taking care in a situation like that.
Mm-hmm. And what year was that?
Yes, that was 2019.
Okay, great. What brought you to the point of being tested? Now, you just mentioned that people that you knew had illnesses and you wanted to kind of make sure you were getting yourself in shape. But was there a point that you felt, gee, I better get tested for this? I think it might be this, but I might think it might be that.
Yeah, actually, we didn't do anything different than we normally did with seeing our doctors, your heart doctor and your general practitioner. But because we did move within about 6 months from thinking about it into a CCRC, at that CCRC, there were lecturers that came in. And one came in and talked about the advantage of early detection for any memory issues. And the way to do that was to have memory screens, the same way that you would have an annual mammogram or PSA test, that you should just get a baseline, a memory screen. And then if there was any decline year by year, you would know very quickly that there was something wrong and you could do something about it.
That's a great thing to do. In one of our past episodes, we talked with Amy Schenk, who actually connected us together. That's one of the things that we spoke about, and that's what she was telling us, get checked all the time. Like I said, a baseline to see where you're going, if you're going.
Yeah, it's kind of a novel idea, particularly with memory issues, because people are so... well, first of all, I don't think people know there's anything that they can do about it. And second of all, they're scared and they don't want to tell their family and they don't want to admit it, or they think it's just normal aging. So there's a lot of reasons that people don't do anything about it normally.
Right. Now, how did you feel about knowing that what you thought it might be has now been confirmed? Was there a pivot moment and say, okay, well, now we know what this is, let's address it?
Well, I actually didn't tell you how I thought that I actually probably did have something wrong, and that is that one morning after I think it was before I went and had the talk about memory screens, I had trouble figuring out the sequence of starting my Instant Pot, and I'd had it for 3 years. And I thought, this is very strange. I should know how to do this. And my husband came over and he said, well, you just do this, and this. And I was kind of embarrassed and scared at the same time. And so having the opportunity to hear about these memory screens, that the two things went together. And so I immediately went, as soon as I could get in, to get this memory screen at the Neuropsychiatric Research Center here in Southwest Florida, in Fort Myers, actually. And I had a memory screen, and it was not normal for my age. And so that's how that all happened. Now, when you had just asked me about it being confirmed, well, I guess I'm a little strange in this reaction, but I was relieved, and I actually was thankful, because I used to be a medical technologist, and so I've always been interested in medicine, and I know the advantage of early detection, just like my friend that was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. If she had been diagnosed at stage 1, she might have had a chance. And the same thing is true with any memory issues. And many of the memory issues are not Alzheimer's, and they can be easily corrected, which I could talk to you about at a later time.
Yep.
So I was maybe I was strange to feel happy, but I was, and I continue to be thankful for the early diagnosis.
You state a good point, is that if you know early enough, you can make the changes. And that's something I've experienced myself with my wife. When it came and it was diagnosed, you go, okay, we change. And that's what we did. In our conversation another time, you said that you and your husband kind of just jumped into it. How much did you change from the way you lived your life, what you ate, what you drank, exercise, etc., to where you are now? Was there a big change, and that it happened overnight, or was it a gradual, you were doing a lot of the things and you just kept on doing those things?
Well, I was doing some of the things that are good for you. I mean, I've always been an outdoors person. My husband and I, after we retired, worked in 50 parks across the United States. And so we were used to being outside and being healthy. I'm not overweight. We were both early diagnosed, probably 10 years ago, that we needed, that we had sleep apnea and we needed to use a CPAP machine. And I know a lot of people are reluctant to do that, but we knew that if you aren't breathing properly, that's not good for the brain or any part of your body. So yes, we were doing that. We were wearing our CPAP machine, or our CPAP, the cover for our nose, and that gave us the air that we needed. We did always use it. However, yes, there were a lot of things that we both took really seriously because we just are that type of people. We want to attack something rather than just to mope about it or try to hide it. So to be specific, we both wore hearing aids at the time, but I got my hearing checked immediately, and they said, well, you could do better with better hearing aids. And so I thought if we were going to spend money, that was probably a good thing to spend it on, because there is a connection between memory loss and hearing loss. Mm-hmm. In fact, I've seen the statistics of 9% of dementia is due to poor hearing. So I immediately did that. I upped my exercise that I was doing, not just walking. I started using a treadmill and doing some running on it. I didn't run outside because I felt it was more likely to fall there than, just on a machine. Mm-hmm. And I made sure that I was getting adequate sleep. If I was tired, I said, okay, time to go take a nap. Animals do that. We should do that.
Amen.
And I've always been socially active, but I got even more active because I did start telling people that I had Alzheimer's, tried to get them to go have memory screens as well. Also, being in Southwest Florida, you know what a hot summer we had, and had brutal. For several hot summers. And hydration is extremely important, up to 8 glasses of water a day, or a liquid that doesn't have salt in it. You need to keep hydrated. That's another tell. So I continue to read things and things that you should do. I know there's a lot of talk about doing brain games, and that's true, but you shouldn't be doing the same brain games all the time. The information says you got to mix it up, because you got to trick your brain and get your brain learning new things. So I also felt so thankful that I was diagnosed, and I saw people around me who were not as well off as I. And I decided that when I was thinking about the fact that maybe my life would go downhill at some point, that I should start talking to people who are worse off than I. And so I started working with people in my community who do have memory issues. They're in a memory center. That was rewarding to me, and I hope it was to them as well. There's other things people should do. I am not a smoker or a drinker, but I think that people should, if they're smoking, try their darndest to stop it. And if they're drinking, I know there's some talk about red wine is beneficial. I'm not sold on that. I think the part of red wine that's good for you is the grape, not the alcohol. And of course I've tried to my vegetables and cut down on red meat and those kinds of things. So yeah, I've done a lot of things differently, I would say.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You made an overhaul. Actually, you were doing pretty well to start with, but you're doing everything that they tell you to do, and that's a challenge depending on background and your lifestyle. How difficult it is, and that's something that I had to do with my wife, and we've made changes, and sometimes we fall off the wagon, so to speak, and I keep on bringing it up. We have to continue to do that to make a difference.
Right.
You're a testament to that, because we've only talked once before, but the reports of people that know you have talked about it, they told me that I'm going to be talking to some woman who's got more energy than 40-year-old people, two of them together, which is good. And you're passionate about what you're doing, and that makes a big difference. And that's really a good thing. You are in a research study with NRPC, correct? I think you told me like 3.5 years you're into it.
Yes, the Neuropsychiatric Research Center, NPRC, and I mentioned that they're right here in Fort Myers, which is certainly convenient. So yes, I'm in a research study. Now, this particular facility treats only, well, I shouldn't say they treat, because it's not a treatment that they're doing yet. What they're doing is clinical studies, and those studies with potential medicines, or sometimes they're just devices or vitamins or something like that, pharmaceutical companies have done research on and feel they've done the test through animals, and now they're ready to try it on people to see if it would, in this case, slow down Alzheimer's. So this facility has about 20 studies going right now for just Alzheimer's, and they're using different drugs or things that other things that might slow it down. And in my case, I get an infusion with this substance, and I get it once a month, and I know I'm getting the real stuff, even though they don't know. The research center knows, but not, in other words, the company, which happens to be Johnson & Johnson, they know, but I don't know for sure, and neither does NPRC. So, but the reason I believe that I'm getting it is that I get really sleepy afterwards, and so I feel the reaction to it.
Very interesting. Other than that, have you noticed any changes from when you started as to where you are? Better memory, more energy? Can you tell that way?
I only know from what the people tell me at the facility. And the last time I had a very long, you see, they not only give you the infusion, they also check your memory by asking you questions periodically. For example, maybe every third visit that I come, they not only take my blood pressure and ask me questions about how I'm feeling, they also do a memory screen of sorts to see how that compares with my previous ones. One of the things that they do is every 6 months, which is very difficult to do, is my husband comes in and he'll tell them something that happened 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago in detail. And then I'll be in a separate room and they'll ask me, I understand that 2 weeks ago you and your husband had something to do with an airport near here. What was that? And then I have to tell them specifically, yes, our son came here. Well, where did you pick him up? Did you pick him up? Yes, we picked him up. Well, where did you pick him up? Well, in arrivals. Well, where did you go after that? And so forth and so on. So it has to be very specific. And after this last testing that went on for a long time, the person who was testing me turned her computer around and she had tears in her eyes. And she said, look at this. And I saw all these numbers. And I said, what do those mean? And she said, you didn't get anything wrong. And it wasn't just what my husband had said, it was other questions that she had asked. And so she said, I've never seen that before. To answer your question, I hope that I'm doing better. Maybe I'm just faking it. I don't know. But that was a big boost to my, just how I felt about that.
Yeah, that's a great story. It's interesting that as many people as I talk to interact with those who have the illness and those who are caregivers. If you didn't tell me, I would not know. You cannot tell.
Well, I appreciate your support. I do stumble occasionally on words. I can tell you that a year ago, it was the first time I noticed it, and I could not remember the word for the name of the tree that's in front of our building. It's a mango tree, and I was so annoyed. Now, I remember it now, but I just not pull that word out. And, that is one of the tells for Alzheimer's is pulling words out. I suspect in the future what will happen to me is I'll be substituting words when I can't think of the right word, and because I understand that's what happens. Mm-hmm. But if it slows down and you gain 6 months or a year or 2 years, I think it certainly is worth making these small changes in your life.
Definitely. And that was the philosophy. They say, well, you can't cure it. Now, there are a couple books out there, one of them which I've read twice, and I'm reading a second book by the same doctor where he does a lot of testing and uses a lot of different protocols, and he doesn't necessarily use drugs from pharmaceuticals, but different things from diet to exercise to everything we've just talked about, and where some people can turn it around if you change what you put into your body, what you do. Instead of sitting around, you're active, you walk, you're on a treadmill. The difference is if you can slow it down, even just like you said, just a little bit, it makes a difference. Then you've got a little bit more hope, and then you put a little bit more energy into trying to make other things click better for you. And that's great. A lot of people don't do that.
Some of the things that you can do are actually fun or helpful. For example, one of the things they say to do is to learn something new. Mm-hmm. Well, I would never try to learn a foreign language or play a musical instrument. Neither one is interesting to me. And if it's not interesting, then I don't think I would do well at it. But what was interesting to me was to learn learn more about my iPhone because I use that every day. And the more you know about what the iPhone does for you, the more helpful it can be. So that's kind of fun. And I'm trying to do that religiously.
Good. That was one of the things that you had said before. You try to learn something new every day. And the more you learn, the better off you're going to be. Just sometimes, you have good days and bad days. I'm the same way. Sometimes I think, man, I just must be catchy because I can't remember diddly squat. That's a bad day. And a good day, you're sharp and you can do it. And so you keep doing positive things. What advice would you share with someone who has just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia?
Well, first off, if you're 60 years old or older, you should have a memory screen, whether you have a diagnosis or not, to get that baseline. But if you are diagnosed for whatever venue that you've been diagnosed, I would say absolutely be positive. There's no advantage to being negative or giving up or saying, I'm not going to do anything because there's no cure for this. Well, there may not be a cure, but there are medicines that are on the market now that do slow down Alzheimer's if you have a certain type. And the things that you just mentioned and I mentioned that are for your health anyway. Mm-hmm. So why would you not want to make for example, if you have arthritis and Alzheimer's, why wouldn't you want to make your arthritis better at the same time you're hopefully making Alzheimer's better by maybe stretching or doing whatever would be good for both. Mm-hmm. So I say stay positive and realize that it's giving you a starting point. It's telling you what's wrong with you. So now you can go attack it and learn about what might be helpful to you. And if for no other reason, it'll force you to do the things that nobody likes to do, and that is financial planning, end-of-life planning. Right. Are you going to give the kids planning? What do you want your kids to know about you before you leave this earth? And all those sort of things. And also, if you become negative about it and think about, okay, I don't want to think about it, but think about your caregiver. Any time you can give your caregiver that you are going to be you is time. It's a gift to your caregiver. Because caregivers, I think, have it worse than Alzheimer's patients from what I've seen. Alzheimer's patients, when they really get sick, don't know what's going on, so they don't know the effect that they have on other people. Mm-hmm. But the effect that they have can be pretty harsh. I would certainly encourage people to learn about the disease, attack it with a positive attitude, continue with their memory screen, consider clinical study. There are many, many clinical studies, not only in Fort Myers, but all over the world where you can have them. That's a choice that you could. And also, right now, locally here, there's at least 2 facilities that treat memory issues exclusively. And one of them is in Bonita Springs, and Lee Health has one as well. And I'm sure there are more. Those are 2 that I have to know about. And also think about what kind of living space you want to be in. If you're in a big house with a yard and that needs attention all the time, and a garage and 2 cars and all this sort of thing, start thinking about reducing the size of where you're living, so that when you may get worse and there's a stress between your caregiver and you, assuming it's your spouse, you won't have to attack all those issues at the same time, moving, for one thing. So I'm a big fan of CCRCs, as you know, but I think that people have to be realistic and make it easy for not only them, but for the caregivers. It's very difficult to get into a facility at the last minute, and by that I mean a memory care issue, a place. So I think planning ahead for this is just as important as planning ahead for any kind of illness.
The information you've just given us is phenomenal. And again, spot on. You've looked at it, you've addressed it, and you've engaged in it. And that's good advice to anybody who is just beginning. And that's kind of what we try to do with our podcast, and help people that they don't know where to go and to get the information, just to pass it along, be facilitators of good information and resources to help anybody who's starting the journey. It's not a fun journey. We're spot on with caregivers, because as time goes on, there's more stress, more pressure if you don't do the things that you're supposed to do. And that's what I've learned going to some of these caregiver meetings, a group of men, and we share ideas and problems and concerns. Even though I've been studying it for a bunch of years, shares, it's like, oh, I didn't know about that, or I heard about that. And then you can do it. And that makes things a lot easier down the road than it does if you don't do it and all of a sudden you're hit with, now what do I do? Because you have to prepare. It's like anything.
That's absolutely true. And the more you prepare, the easier the road's going to be.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Well, I got to tell you, this has been a pleasure speaking with you, and the information you shared with us will surely help those who have heard your story. All I can say is keep up the great work that you're doing on this journey. You've just been phenomenal. Thank you very much for your time, Lee.
Well, you're very welcome, and I appreciate all that you're doing, because I'm reading your podcasts also because they have a lot of information that I don't know, and you can never know too much about whatever's going on in your life.
You got that right.
We'll be right back to Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
Are you the caregiver for someone living with dementia? You're not alone.
I was a caregiver for my wife for 10 years, and it was a lot of work.
I'm a caretaker for my wife who has Alzheimer's.
I'm a caregiver of my husband that has CTE, and it's incredibly challenging.
The Dubin Center in Fort Myers has been offering free educational classes and support since 1995.
The Dubin Center has helped me exponentially with so many questions answered. It's just been great.
This is Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Lee Belanger. She is an amazing woman that has a lot of fight and lots of energy, and a driving passion to talk to others about the fight against Alzheimer's. And perhaps you found some information today that will be helpful during the upcoming holidays. You know, if you know someone who has a family member or friends who are dealing with a loved one who has Alzheimer's or any type of dementia, please share this podcast with them as we try and grow it to reach more caregivers. We would appreciate that very much. For more information, you can check out Alzheimer's Support Network at alzsupport.org/about us. The Dubin Center at dubincenter.com. To find your local chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, you can visit alz.org/local resources and find your local chapter. Dr. Perry's HealthSpan Partners website is healthspanswfl.com. And for more information on the guide, it's probably easier to just Google it, Edge it, or DuckDuckGo it. The website is gutpunched.com, and the email address is gutpunchac@outlook.com. Thanks for joining us, and please come back again for more. God bless.
This has been Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers, with your host, Jeff Edwards. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to us on all the platforms like Spotify, Apple, Pandora, and more. If you have a question or want to get in touch, our email is gutpunchedac@outlook.com.